So I think what initially hit me was I think the acting and presumably the script. I'm guessing it wasn't ad-libbed. Was pretty strong because obviously the kind of the way it's filmed, it has to be. So it's not about cutting to loads of different angles and covering stuff. So I thought that was really well done. One slight question mark was about the sort of justice element, because I think we may both agree on this point, that it was that kind of whether it was justice or not, because he wasn't that likeable a character. But obviously that's a decision for the sort of the director and script writer on that. But I think also linked to kind of the sort of format, the way it's filmed, and actually I can't remember the exact length, but it's not super short, and actually it held my attention throughout. And so I think the kind of pacing and the kind of tempo and the length was kind of spot on for the message you wanted to say. There was enough to kind of build the characters up a little bit, because obviously, especially when you split into sort of dual elements. So yeah, I think those are sort of my main thoughts on it. So really well done.
Yeah. I think the film had what we call very clear systems, where you knew after you were shown what I forget the name of the main character. Once you got to know who they were originally, you were interested in their arc, and you kind of wanted to travel with them in those dual worlds and see what they do in each world. So that was really well done, and I think it was also helped by a very strong performance by that main protagonist. I do agree that it was, in my opinion, a missed opportunity actually to not have utilized that dual split in the narrative, to look at justice from both ends, where on one side obviously blackmail is terrible, but also cheating isn't wonderful. So there's an opportunity here to actually look at how justice finds a way in both ways, in both stories in different ways. But overall, I do agree that within very, very limited resources, this was quite a well realized film. So yeah, well done. I think this one was quite an interesting one because it kind of was quite short. So I was wondering if this was sort of a teaser or trailer of sorts. But it did give me a good sense of what that metal workshop is about, a nice variety of shots. You definitely kind of get a sense of what you would do if you were to attend the workshop. So I think if it were meant like a trailer, then that would have really, really kind of hit the spot with maybe a couple of extra branding, or information related to sort of where do I find more information, a QR code or whatever. The vertical format also interested me, but I don't know if you wanted to say anything about the sort of composition within that vertical format.
Yeah, so I think this felt similar to quite a few of the things we do for clients nowadays, is sort of like social media promos, and especially with places like that, you kind of want to show the process. And so I thought overall it was good at kind of what felt like taking us through, the steps without dwelling on anything too much. So I think the sort of again, the pacing was really good, and it kind of fit in that, if you had done 5 minutes, it might have felt a little bit too long, unless there was like narrative, someone talking. So for what it was very well paced. I think one thing which may be linked to the sort of the aspect ratio as well, but also just the choice of shots, is I'd like to have seen like wider. My preference is sort of some wides and then also some close, especially with craft stuff, because now I don't know what the setting, it might be that their workspace was quite small, and I know you have to sort of work within your bounds, but if there was a sort of nice, even with other co-workers unrelated, almost see the space that person or that crafts person is living in, and working in rather. And yeah, that would have been nice. So slight technical thing, just like to see some wides, if possible. And then I think again, yeah, so like a call to action at the end. Equally, I understand this is like short films rather than being very sort of corporate and promo, but because of the style, I assume it would require like a call to action with a website or a somewhere to, what does this person do? Can I buy their stuff? Do they do courses? That sort of thing. But I think, yeah, overall very well done, and I did actually really like the music, which I know is, because it's a bane of my sort of professional existence, is choosing music for these kind of videos is always tricky. because they kind of carry the pace, and I thought it was chilled but had that sort of drum beat tempo, so that was really well selected, I think.
Yeah, I completely agree that I think it's quite easy to make the music very, very dramatic and this one was sort of just the right tone and mood that was needed for this video. So yeah, well done. Sort of a lot of archival material, right from photographs to, you know, very, very sort of beautiful historical footage. It used some really lovely moments of there was a personal touch in there as well, so that carried you through the narrative. So I quite enjoyed watching this one, and I think it told me about a part of the world that I was not aware of. So that's always something that's nice. When you're looking at anything that's you know, classified as a documentary, you want not just information, you want insight, and that's, I think, something that this film gave me. So I was quite pleased to watch it.
Yeah, I agree with all of that. I think one thing as well that because we liked it was that we wanted to almost see more of it. So I admit it might have been you had maybe a certain duration in mind or certain restrictions or something like that. I'm not aware of what those were. But, you know, it would be great to also, you know, I can imagine with enough footage and time that could also be, you know, feature long thing. Because again, I have, you know, relatives who were in the same war but not flying, so therefore I don't know anything about the bombers other than, you know, very surface level sort of stuff. So all of that pretty much was kind of new information. And there was one very slight technical thing which just I noticed, which I mentioned about, is because of the subject on it, and it was a really nice pace with a lot of the shots, and like the images where you do the slow zoomed in, very effective, perfect sort of speed. There's one or two where I think it was like the digital maps where almost I wanted to see that a little bit longer, but we cut in and out of very good imagery as well. So I don't know, again, that's obviously a kind of a choice in the edit. So I wasn't there in the sort of edit chair, but I almost wonder if there's a way you sort of extend that a little bit and we can kind of take in that, you know, the sheer breadth for us who weren't there, you know, to see all those kind of those pinging bits on the map kind of tell their own story. But no, overall, I think very good. And I think stuff, even like the voiceover was very well selected, like really good tone, really good quality on the recording as well, to sort of get granular with the technical side. But overall, really good job. Yeah,
I think there's space for this film to breathe a lot more if that is something that, you know, the filmmaker would like to work on, because we want to know more. We just need time to absorb it all, you know, all of the images, all of the information. So yeah.
Right, I won't attempt the title of this in case I get it wrong. But I can actually speak Chinese, but not Japanese, so it's very different. So I think overall the sort of the humour was really good. Very well acted, like in that regard, in terms of getting those sort of those kind of points of humour across really well. Sort of from it ties into the humour, but also sort of a technical point for me. I assume it was sort of to mimic kind of live kind of sports, the sort of camera angle, but I might have wanted to see one or two angles earlier on, just so we could. There's a few times where the actors were doing some quite interesting things, sort of facially and stuff, and maybe just to see it a little bit closer or a slightly different angle might have been nice. But I don't think it took away from it overall. It was just like, if I was saying, you know, a similar kind of humour and a similar kind of setup, that might be something to look at, because for me the best part of it, so the humour was great, but also then the sort of still comedic in a way, but the end where we do see a different angle, which I guess is made even more, is more of a contrast because we didn't see them earlier. So I get it in that regard. And then the slow sort of digital push in does really work, because it's quite an effective monologue that kind of changes the tone a little bit, but then also rounds out the short film. And a lot of short films that, again, I'm not sure the length of that, maybe sort of 5-6 minutes, they do also need that sort of that nice ending to tie it up, because it's not a short sort of 1 minute concept. So yeah, I probably rambled a bit.
No. And I agree with all of this. In fact, what I found very interesting about this film was that there was again, a world that we were invited into and that we entered willingly and we stayed throughout, which is more difficult than one might imagine, you know, like it's not that easy, especially.
Was it actually a real game or not?
I'm not sure.
Like it could be made up, but it could be real. I don't know. But yeah.
I mean, then there was a lot of work into that Wikipedia page,
Yeah,
I have to say, because if it wasn't a real thing, it's something where even if it's, you know, if it's imagined, then fantastic, because then you've created a very believable world, which is based very much on the rules of how we know, you know, competitions and games being played. So it's an excellent sort of an example of how to invite your, you know, viewer into a world and keep them in it while the entire film is on. I do agree that, again, this is that question of systems where as soon as you start watching something, you sort of recognize this is a horror, this is a comedy, this is a mockumentary, you know. I struggled a little bit to understand whether, because of the camera work, whether we were watching a mockumentary. It was quite obvious from the other ways in which it was suggestive that it was a mockumentary. But in terms of the camera work, there was a lot of potential to use the aesthetics of a mockumentary, where you have those quick pans, especially for comedic effect, which will, you know, draw your attention to specific activities, specific actions, gestures, expressions, and that really helps you kind of make the most of that genre, basically. So I think that would have been very interesting. Otherwise, it does look a bit more like you're watching a sports interview, like you said, exactly. So it's nice to be able to draw on the conventions that exist within that genre to be able to make it as recognizable as possible. But I had a few kind of, you know, I had a couple of laughs while watching it, and I think it was quite, you know, I think the room also was chuckling along with the film. So that's quite an achievement, I think.
And I think actually it still made me laugh as much, if not more, the second time of sort of watching it. So that says something, I think, about the effectiveness of the humour.
Yeah. I think the biggest sort of achievement of this film is how moving it is, how beautifully everything comes together to tell you the story of an inanimate object that is important to individuals, communities, wildlife, just really demonstrating from, you know, like that journey of hope, resistance, and then finally kind of acceptance and resilience, because there's something there that people move on despite loss. So there's a lot of universal themes that I found in this film, which were also at the same time sort of all a result of excellent filmmaking. I think there was just a lot to really like technically about this as well, and I'm sure you'll have things to say about you know, a lot of it. But I did find that in terms of the pace of the edit, I really enjoyed that. I think there was a lot that worked quite well in the way there were montages that helped us, you know, see that moment where it was slowly being deconstructed, but also reactions of people that actually hit home the point that it's so important to everyone. I did find that the sound was used well, but there was scope for the world of that entire, you know, that the space to be a little more full. So that is the only thing I'll say in terms of, you know, kind of points for improvement for this film. But yeah.
So I'd echo all of that, and so I won't cover all of that, just to give it some other comments and other perspective. But overall, I think really well done, really thoughtful piece. I think also it takes skill to take quite a niche, or like I've literally walked past that place before. To me, it is just metal. Sorry to say, like I lived near there, but I wasn't in that community for very long. But through that, you learn about the community, and actually, that for me, that's the important bit. Obviously, it rallied around that Leslie and the people involved in that. But I think from a sort of emotive point of view, that was very effective. And then also, I think technically, there was it used a lot of different techniques very well, and that's actually, I think for most films, especially when you go a bit longer like that, using different techniques is always very important. So it's not like you're using one trick. So in recent years, I found drones a bit much in some pieces, but here it shows you why they're used, because it uses them perfectly. I mean, I spoke to you and probably ranted for far too long about a particular shot where you see I'm big on reflections as well, that's just my own bias. So I loved it where you see the reflection of the oil, it pulls up and it's like a 30-40 second shot, but I'm not bored and it's constantly revealing stuff. Yeah. So that's both a filming choice, great angle, but also an editing choice that you didn't say, wow, nobody's going to watch that for 30 seconds. So I think I really like that. And yeah, I think overall, it's a good example of using interviews as well to carry a piece forward. Like if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have got that emotion, because like you got the main thrust from Leslie, who was clearly very passionate about it. But obviously she had a slight bias one way, but the film actually was still quite open to other people's opinions and did show the others. So I think that was really mature filmmaking as well, from my point of view. And yeah, I think just overall really well done. And I really liked the positive ending that you got the bench and you got the birds nesting on the blade as well. I thought that was just a simple but very, very effective way of tying up. Because again, as I said, with another piece that was shorter but longer than some of the others, is you do need to kind of tie the narrative up a bit on whether it's documentary or a fiction film. But yeah, so I probably have covered most of the things, but yeah, I really liked that one.
I think that was a strong piece. Yeah.
First, I think I'm probably the exact target audience of that, being very sort of technically minded, and looking at edits that you have those issues, not quite that pronounced, but and also I'm not a fan of the recent sort of class targeting and all that. So yeah, very, very well done, I think, on kind of choosing like a concept to topic and then sort of very much nailing what you were trying to do. It felt like a good length as well. You wouldn't want to draw that out unless there was going to be sort of some other arc to it. So I thought that was really, really good as a very short film. I guess so the negative, I guess, is obviously you're making it for a film group. So I guess whether the humour would carry fully to people outside the film group, but that's potentially sort of a pointless criticism, because obviously you made it for this group. But if I had to sort of find, be really picky and annoying, but overall I think it did right. And I really liked the acting, which was it yourself? So I thought that was really good. And the kind of amount, there was sort of 4 or 5, kind of bits like the colour grading. I thought that was a good amount, so it didn't feel too long, but equally it wasn't like 1 or 2 and you didn't quite get the sort of build up. But
yeah, I mean, it's a film that's very clear about what it wants to say, says it with the right number of shots and sequences. It doesn't need a lot more to make its point, I think. Building on what you said about sort of whether it would carry outside of the group, in a way, a lot of good filmmaking, even if it's about a particular person's journey or a story, it always tugs at some emotional themes. So I think that's the way to kind of build on this idea where it would carry outside of a group. What does this have to do with, say, the structures of the film industry? How exclusionary can they be for people who can't afford that 999 plus VAT, right? But these are our concerns. These are important concerns for people who are interested in film but aren't quite, it's too much of a barrier at times. So these are the ways in which the personal and the political can connect up, and I'm all for that always. But it's probably that would be my only kind of way to develop that I would suggest. But I quite enjoyed it. It's also a great kind of film if you wanted to use it as in your portfolio, because it tells them that you know how to make a joke about grading. So you know how to grade, essentially. You know what good grading should be. So it's not quite demonstrating what you can do, but you know that in doing something wrong, you've demonstrated that you know what it should be, right? So I think it's a good film for a portfolio if the person you were applying to or the organization you were applying to had a sense of humor. So,
I think one point which I didn't think of before, but is not specifically about that, but just a general point as someone who's been in the industry a while, and from a technical point of view, there is that thing of what do you pay for? So is it like courses? Is it like kit? Like I'm a camera guy, so lens. I see a new camera, it's a new lens, and there's that balance of having the right kit, but also actually as like filmmakers in whatever role we do, it's like you can make amazing stuff with. I mean, I've got 1 or 2 lenses which I've adapted from like 30, 40 years ago. So that kind of shows actually, depending on what you want to do, you can be very creative. So, which that film sort of hinted at through its creativity, but also that message of that kind of like, would you actually pay? Well, some people actually probably have paid that much for a course in any industry that hasn't done well. So yeah, maybe that's me going off on a slight moral sort of point, but yeah, just be careful with your kit purchases, I guess.
If you have that much money, you might as well just buy your own kit and do things. So yeah. Yeah,
really good.
Again, you can hear the chuckles in the room, which means that the comedy has worked, I think. It plays quite well on the expectations that it sets up, which is a big win for the way the story is, story unfolds. I think it's also something that it's very difficult to bring a casino environment. So I do understand the production design restrictions you might have had budget wise, but the black and white choice and the tight shots actually help cheat a little bit with the music, that you've added. So I think that's something that helped manage setting up that world a little bit more than it would have been. It would have been quite a challenge otherwise.
Yeah. So I agree. I think similar to the previous one, it was good. Like, you have the concept, you execute in the right amount of time and kind of the pacing. Which is very different. It's something why I respect it in a lot of other people, because I struggle with that myself. So I think it was really good on that. Again, yeah, I completely appreciate it. It's very hard to recreate that. But I think, yes, the black and white helped to, I don't know what the colours were, but probably reduce out colours which might have hinted away. This is a very niche thing for me, but the picture noise, so the grain sort of got me a little bit, but I appreciate that's just, a kit thing. But I think what was really nice as well actually was the camera angles on this one. So it actually shows what kind of my sort of ethos. Somebody very intelligent probably phrased it a lot better, but you sort of stay wide until you need to go in and show something. It's sort of generally, unless it's a certain concept, and that I think did it. So we sort of built into slightly closer and closer shots on yourself to see that those reactions, which were a core part of it, but it stayed wide at the start, cut into a 2-shot, then open it, and the blocking as well was quite good, where you walk in the background of the 2-shot. So I think there was a lot of quite good points from that side of things, that sort of blocking, direction of the camera angles and that sort of stuff. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I think in terms of a lot of short films, the shorter ones that we've seen, which are a minute and a very clear concept, a lot of filmmakers actually struggle with too big an idea within a short duration. And I think these films are good examples of how to keep it simple and crisp within the duration that you're intending to make it. So that's something that doesn't always happen in short form, because we watch a lot more feature work than we do short work, and then that ends up informing how we like to tell our stories, where we want it to breathe, but we want to do it in 3 minutes. So this is, I think, it's quite a strength to keep building on.
Yeah.
Cool.
Brilliant.
This film is very unique on perspective, because I think this is the only one where we see the point of view of a child. And I did have a question for the filmmaker about whether the content was also partly decided by the protagonist, because I think it is very innocent in the way it's just, kind of relating those experiences. And I really enjoyed watching that, especially when he said, we did that thingy. I was just like, oh, you don't have the right words for it. In terms of sort of, I do think it was a bit more descriptive than it needed to be. So it sort of really took you through the training day, as opposed to kind of focus a little bit more on what the child or the other children were feeling. So I think that would have been an interesting way to kind of bring out a little bit more. I enjoyed some of those graphics, which were quite, enjoyable and quite well placed. A little bit of music would have helped, I think, keep the pace going. But yeah, I don't know if you wanted to add something more.
Yeah, so I think sort of looking at it sort of from the start. So I think, again, I really liked a lot of the graphics. and I think they helped set out that kind of, it felt not dreamlike, but very much from his perspective, and those reinforce that. And so that was very kind of endearing, and I think with any film it kind of helps to set the tone early on. So I guess turn that into a slight negative, if I was being nitpicky, is we then, I think it loses a bit of the pace, and then we lose the graphics and that sort of that perspective a little bit during the. So I think maybe it could be a little bit quicker in the middle part, and I'd love to see loads more graphics sort of spring back, especially like it was really nice actually to get the cheers when I think it was when they played the match at the end. So that was nice. That kind of brought elements of that back. But then almost, there could be sort of some quite fun stuff. I don't know if somebody tackles or sound effects and some graphics and stuff would be really nice. But I think sort of overall it was really nice to see that different perspective. And I think just it's kind of really positive to watch that somebody far younger than when I ever first thought about making a video is thinking about that sort of stuff. So keen to see what they do next and in the years to come. And also it was kind of a positive message as well with the footballer, the professional footballer from Wolves, coming and kind of doing community type work. So I thought that was really good to highlight if nothing else. So
yeah, well done. Yeah. In third place, we have a tie between Justice Finds a Way and Kamentu. Yep. We thought they had very sort of, they were both strong films for the third place, but had very different strengths. So that's the reason that they're tied, isn't it?
Yep.
Second place.
Yeah. So I think one of the reasons why they're tied is because we had a discussion. We were kind of working out, and they were obviously quite different films, and what they were trying to do and what they did do, and all these things. So it's hard to sort of compare them, which is partly why they're tied, because there were sort of quite strong points from both of them. So we felt rather than pushing one down, we sort of. Otherwise, we'd have been there talking for a lot longer.
Being like, exactly which point.
But so well done to both of those. Yeah.
Yes. Second place. Do you want to announce the name?
Yeah. So second was one of the Berlin boys.
Yay! Again, for the many strengths that we mentioned, I think that definitely was such a great. Way to bring together a very wide range of materials, but also have a strong core at the center of it all to kind of keep your attention, right? So definitely for that reason, in second place. And then in first place, together maybe? Yeah?
You go for it.
Okay, yeah. Gas holder number 4.
And then I think also we're giving, I'm not sure the full name of it, but the technical award.
Yes, the Stan Ullman Award.
Stan Ullman technical award to that gas holder number 4 as well.
Yes.
For many of the reasons. So obviously from a technical point of view, I already said lots on that. So I thought that was really accomplished, and sort of maybe you want to say a bit about the sort of other side of it.
Just looking at the sort of selection of films, I think we found that this one was the most well-rounded in its creative, thematic as well as technical strength. So I think that's what one looks for when one is, building that list or that ranked list of films. So it was really, really strong on all of those points, and I think this would be a film that I'd like to watch in a festival at some point as well. I think it is something that can also really represent Reading in lovely ways to the wider world. So congratulations to that filmmaker if they're here.
She's not here tonight.
No.
Okay, well, do convey our congratulations to the filmmaker, and we're looking forward to what everyone is going to do going forward, because I'm sure every film is born out of different constraints. So I think each one of you, whoever has submitted an entry, we can see that there are various ways in which you've dealt very creatively with the constraints that you might have had, whether it was technically or time or whatever. So congratulations to you all for kind of
and I think
making
as well,
good work.
just to echo that is there were so many different films as well that actually there was non-fiction, there was fiction, there was some which were like a minute, and then others, so like I think the longest was probably Gas Holder number 4.
Yeah.
So obviously that was very well done, but also did have that extra time to sort of flex its narrative and that sort of thing. But then the short ones, as we said, also were very effective at what they did. So I think it's just very, very positive, really. I'm just really, really impressed by the whole selection, really.
Yeah, absolutely.
I sort of, just on a personal, I completely understand that there'll be certain ones so for the Gas Holder, to use an example, was clearly filmed over long periods. Some of you might have literally only had like a day or even hours, because I've been in those situations as well, whether it's commercial or a short film, or there's so many different constraints on location, on cameras, on actors, on you're just trying to get your mates together and create something on a weekend, whatever it might be. So just really well done to all of you, basically.
Yeah. And we've heard a little bit about how long the history of this group is, and that's what we were going to say, that there's a story here that everyone can work on, I think, because we'd love to see that film.
Yeah, I was surprised to see the cup that had, I think went back to 63, was the first sort of winner of one of the cups up there. So I'd love to, if anyone has the time and the will to do it, like to almost tell the history, because I think I was actually surprised when I was approached to take part in this, which I'm very honoured to, is that I didn't even realise this, and I'd love to just I will be telling lots of people I meet now in the local sort of business community and everything, because people always ask me about, how much, filming is done here and stuff. And now I can say, well, look, this is probably why, Reading's such a great place for creative stuff like video, because there's a club like this, that has that history. So, yeah.
Absolutely. And like I said, if there's any way that I can help with connecting you up with more, say, Screen Berkshire opportunities, or if you'd like to know about the university courses and things, then I'm very happy to continue chatting or share links outside of this space as well. Thank you.
Thanks very much.